Hello, Boxen fans around the world. Thanks for joining us once again here on TalkinFight. Joining me in the studio today, we've got Kristian, head honcho of Boxen247, our friends across the pond. How you doing, Kristian?
I'm very good. How are you, Graham?
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. I see we're going to be talking about Trevor Bryan. And so just for fun, just before we get started, I said to myself, wow, this is going to be a short conversation. So just for fun, I went to BoxRec. I went to BoxRec. I'm looking, I'm like, holy crap, he's not even in the top 25. Where the heck is this guy? I know he was on the Don King promoted fight this past weekend, which he won. I think a split decision. And but you put him in the headline. So what do you have to say about this young man?
Well, with the question of should he be as such the WBA world heavyweight champion, the answer is not a long one. It is very short, and the simple answer is no, absolutely not. No way. How can he be the heavyweight champion? In the condition that he was in, and it's not like he is a career that condition. He came in way overweight. I mean, on the way up, he was a lot lighter. And he's not even performing as a champ compared to how he was on the way up anyway. And that wasn't sort of great that any of the top 10 in the world, top 15 would have nightmares about. No, just completely just a disappointment. And why the WBA haven't sorted out this situation, I don't know. Admittedly, the WBA are doing quite well with a lot of the belts, this belt, whatever, all these other made-up trinket belts which are there. They are scaling it down, but they need to bring the scaling down onto this kind of debacle anyway. Because if Trevor Bryan going around calling himself the world heavyweight champion, no, cannot. Undeserved. It is not right. It is just wrong. What do you think?
I'm in total agreement. I'm somewhat astounded and somewhat speechless at this whole, as you've called it, a debacle, simply because you take a look. I'm just glancing with my left eye over here at the BoxRec. And I'm saying to myself, my God, man, with this guy, if he wants to even go, like we were talking about this last week, if you want to even unclog that top 5, you're looking at 2024. And so this guy's holding on to a WBA championship belt, clinging onto it, I might add. And who's he got next? Like Daniel Dubois? Like what? I don't know. I'm confused. I'm actually confused.
Apparently, yes, that is going to be Daniel Dubois. And it's a funny one with this because of, if you go back to when you had the WBO that came about in, what was it, 1988, I think it was. You had the IBF, which was the early 80s. It is not the belt that made the champion. It was the champion that made the belt. And if you get somebody who is going to be more decent as a fighter, as a heavyweight, as a supposed heavyweight champion, with that belt around them, it might actually, possibly, could maybe have a little bit more stature to it, maybe, if that's the right word. Daniel Dubois would take out Bryan, got 3 rounds. Certainly, if Bryan came out in the condition that he did in the fights that he just at last fight the other day, and that was no disrespect to his opponent that came in last notice, who gave him a real good run for his money. He made it a fight. I don't think Bryan was particularly expecting that, to the point of it being split decision. Bryan is not going to be there on this world title championship level for very long. If a better person, a better fighter, a better heavyweight, a more worthy champion took that belt, had it round their waist, I don't know, it might add a little bit more to it. But still, it's this whole thing, regardless of who is holding it, how can you have it? I know it's the same with all the weights. How can you have a world heavyweight, a world whatever champion, and it not be any other guys that are at the top with the current still going on merry-go-round, which is happening at the top. And even when we spoke last week, we thought there was going to be a bit more clarity. Friday, as expected, as I heard as such, it happened with being with Fury. See, automatically goes to Fury white again. Thought we could have more clarity with that, and there's still murky waters with the whole of the thing. It is not signed. There is still a lot of silence. There is a lot of non-clarity with that again and again and again, to the point of Perspid's been won. It's a week later. What is or isn't going on? Back to Bryan, because it's very easy to go back up to the top of the merry-go-round and everything that has been going on for the past, God knows, whatever. I don't know. Bryan's not going to be up there for very long unless he continues fighting the kind of people that he has. I mean, Mahmoud Char could come along. He is deserved to have, because I thought he was the champion, Emma, how do you pronounce that word? Emma, what do they call it? The champion, like in Recess, for example. Because you had all the stuff with all that stuff going on with Don King and all that was going on, and Char did have it, but he was stripped of it, but he was guaranteed, a shot. Where's that guaranteed shot gone? I know he's had one fight in the past, probably 4 or 5 years, which was that second round blowout of Christopher Lovejoy. But he still deserves his shot. Now, I think Char at the reins with the belt adds a little bit more than Trevor Bryan done, because I think Char would beat Bryan. But I'm hoping, because I can't see them, as in the WBA, taking this and just wiping this off, because it's only via pressure that they've reduced the amount of belts that they've got anyway. They're not doing this out of, no, we see the way we do it, there's too many belts. But no, this is not, this reduction scheme that they've got in place is not from the kindness of their heart to sport of boxing, because it's wrong. No, it's because of public pressure. But they are still going to draw a line where they stop, and with which titles exactly they're going to take off. And I can't see this being one of them. But I think the only thing that gives us a bit of ray of hope with this debacle of a situation with this title is that a better fighter will hold that belt. So you will have the fighter that will make the belt, not the other way around. Because the belt making the fighter currently in Bryan is not working. It is not. Somebody better. Dubois, I do rate him. I think he will help the situation, especially if he did fulfill some of the promise he did show prior to his one loss that he had. I still think he's very capable. I think he can mix it at the top, and I think he could be a better, more worthy, and more accepted champ as well, as long as he wins it, if it happens, and he gets some credible opposition. And we're saying this, and I might regret saying this later on, next week, whatever, but at least you've got the top of the tree with those titles, and it's all clocked. There's no more clarity, as we well know. At least this will give some hope and make, I think, hopefully, some credible bouts that would take place. At least it'll have a little bit more shine to it, being the supposed World Heavyweight Championship, blah, 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 of the WBA. Because, it's clogged at the top. We are no clearer. It is now a week later. You've had back to Fury and White. You've had the Perspids. That was 6 days ago. Where's the announcement of the big fight? There's nothing. All is very quiet. Even with that said, because now we know that supposedly it is meant to be Fury versus White that is happening. So therefore, the eyes shift over to the situation with Usyk and Joshua with the supposed rematch. Bearing in mind the rematch that clause has already been activated. Silence. Nothing. If I was a heavyweight fighter in the moment and I was in the top 15, I'd be kicking, screaming, shouting, whatever, because you're there doing nothing. You can be mandatory and be doing nothing. Joe Joyce, what the hell? And as we said last week, you've got these rematches. When they finally get their shit together, there's going to be rematch clauses, I'm sure, in the fights anyway. So mandatory is not going to, I said last week, not going to get a chance until 2024. I think that is very hopeful. It's going to roll over into 2025. It will do. I've got my boxing crystal ball out. You see. So back to the WBA regular belt. At least it might spur on some of the better fights to take place. Maybe with the best of the rest, we shall see.
Just to give you an example, for the fans out there, just to give you an example of where this all lies. I said earlier, Trevor Bryan sits at number 38 on the BoxRec standings. And that's because of his point total of 6.502. And he's got a 3-star rating. Sitting two above him is Filip Hrgovic with 6.536 rating. If you go to the top of the standings, and you'll find Alexander Usyk, he has 428.5 points. So you're talking 6 points for Trevor Bryan, 428 points for Alexander Usyk, who's number one. And he's got a 5-star rating, just by comparison alone. So in between those two, you've got, 37 fighters? And I'm looking at the names. I'm saying to myself, okay, and as I said, Daniel Dubois is number 22 with 17.45 points and a 4-star rating. So that's just by BoxRec's calculations and where their standings are based on their point system. And you're looking at that and you're saying to yourself, well, I am saying to myself, you can sort of see, because a lot of arguments have been presented this way, you can sort of see why these guys hang on to their belts, and I'll give Don King credit for this. Trevor Bryan maintains his unbeaten record, 22-0. But you take a look at the fighters ahead of him, and you're saying pick any one of them. Any one of them, theoretically, should be able to beat Trevor Bryan. I'm blown away. You know what? There's even a Canadian in there, top 30, Simon Keane. I've never heard of the fellow, but out of Quebec with 8.5 points. But the point is like the point differential between the top fighters, the true top fighters, is incredible compared to a WBA heavyweight champion. And I can't believe it. As I said earlier, I'm speechless. When I looked at this, I went, whoa.
Completely agree. And as one of the comments made, it's time for a new era in heavyweight boxing. Yes, going back to, Dubois, I may be completely wrong with it. I think Dubois will be one of the top guys in the mix. He's young. He's only early 20s. You've got, him that is up and coming, that has got a lot of time left, a lot of time. Gerald Miller, that is one for the future. This is going to be the new era, I think. It's going to be after the U6, Furies, Whites, and AJs. These are the kind of people which are going to come through. It might be too bad, but it is due something. It is due somebody to come along. And it is reminding me very much now of the 80s part of boxing, when they called it the lost era, I think it was, when you had the title literally. Okay, it's not quite like that. We're not passing the title from one to another like it was then, because it's not even being passed around, let alone anything else. It's not even being fought for to pass around at the moment. I mean, the amount of times that the fights are being for is ridiculous. If you compare these to, I think, to every era, it's going to be the lowest amount ever. Especially if you go back to the Muhammad Ali days and things like that, where they were just, fighting. And it's the way, and I know you have to then, because if you just got one champ, but even now with multiple champs, it is happening. But going back to the lost era, it was just the state of what was on, the state of some of the fighters, how an overweight fighter, going back to Bryan, can be as such by some as a top level fighter. Because as much as we're saying this, I'm sure some people might not even agree with what we're saying, but there's people out there, whether it be naivety, whether it be sold by the idea of the WBA Heavyweight Championship, sold by a very good salesman called Don King. But some people are in the belief, and some people, and would be, if you said to them who's the current heavyweight champion, some people turn around and say Trevor Bryan. Oh my God. And it just goes back, and this is what I mean, back to the 80s, where back then, if you asked who the heavyweight champ was, it was such a confusing situation. Even if you did have the one dominant guy early on, which is Larry Holmes, he did switch over from the WBC to the newly created IBF, with much as it caused some confusion, and he made the belt because he dropped the WBC. A lot of people did assume that was more what we would say now as a casual viewer of the sport. They would think that it wasn't actually Larry Holmes, but it was one of the others that picked up the WBC belt, which was thrown around for a while. And it's just with the state, how it is, how it's regarded, reminds me of the 80s. Full circle back to the question which somebody said, where it's time for a new era in heavyweight boxing. I just wish somebody would come along that is going to be like Tyson, that is dominant, that can wipe up. I mean, I can't think of one person being fair. I might be shot for this, and it can be argued in the second or maybe third part of his career, but with Mike Tyson, certainly up to and during his peak, up to 88, there was nobody that was ducked. He cleared out. There was nobody that was missing, that was ducked, that he didn't fight, that came forward and said they would fight him. Just want somebody to come along that is willing and that will be able to do that. Is General Miller one of those people? Can Dubois improve enough for that to happen? Who knows? But God, somebody like Mike Tyson, please sort it out. It just needs moving. It needs clarity. It's a clear out. And going back to that comment again, it needs a new era, absolutely, because we're trying to choose not swear words. This just pantomime at the moment is just, come on, what is it? What is stopping them? Is it the money? Is it the, I don't know. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Sort it out, somebody.
You know, it's crazy what Anthony Joshua said this week. So here I was last week defending Anthony Joshua, thinking based on this fantastic trainer he was about to announce, based on his new strategy to deal with his reach advantage, I was picking Anthony Joshua to beat Usyk. Okay, so this week, what does Anthony Joshua turn around and say? Oh, I don't need a trainer. What the heck is going on?
Yes, their trainer. Well, he does. He needs something, because if something doesn't change, you're going to get the same result. I think, personally, I'm under the impression that he's listened to many or too much to the many people which have been saying he needs to go out there and just be aggressive, be the old AJ. And I think that has, as much as that maybe a different approach is needed, I think that he is under the impression now that if he just goes in with a different approach, i.e. trying to not outbox the boxer or outbox the very clever, devious and very smart boxer, he might actually win. And it's not going to happen. It's possible that it could happen because he is very powerful and it just takes blah, 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 all the rest of it. But usually that kind of thing won't work with a fighter, even if he was coming up in weight and he is a far naturally smaller man. It's not going to happen with somebody like Usyk. No way. It cannot happen. General Miller versus Derek Chisora would be a good test at this point. Absolutely. I think he's got, certainly with what he has shown, I'm going to choose my words right here, so far, that would be a good matchup. He could step up, and I don't think he would, certainly, with Chisora wanting to carry on, he's not going to have the money, as I think we discussed this last week, as a gatekeeper. It's not going to happen because he's now going to have to step down a level. But at least this against a big unknown name will still generate money. And I still think that would be a good fight. And I think it is very possible as well. Because I think the promoters and with Miller himself, I think should be rubbing his hands at the moment with what is out there, as much as he's not at a point where you'd stick him in at the top. So that at the top with that complete circus at the moment is not affecting him. There's a lot of good fights to make. And I think now would be a good time to throw him in because he shows a lot of promise. But as long as the same thing doesn't happen that happened with Daniel Dubois, where he was supposedly, and I was definitely one of them, that thought he had a lot of promise. I still think he has. And he still was doing very good against Joe Joyce. And he was ahead, what was it, 2 of the 3 cards or some at the time he was ahead. Bar the eye injury, etc. If that would have gone a distance, he could have, he could have won. Apart from, he took himself out of the fight, then he's labelled a quitter, unfair, all the rest of it. Why we should think anything less of him, I really don't know, because he's got to be, what, I can't remember, 22, 23, something like that. You've got a lot of time, and he hasn't fought great opposition since. Bogdan Danu, and who else was the second fight he's had? That was the Romanian champion. There was, I think, one other, which wasn't of great caliber. But do you really need to put it into a higher caliber to build the confidence up, and with somebody that is so young that still needs to carry on and learn the trade? Because the general consensus is that he was rushed just a little bit too soon against Joyce, which, you know, maybe that was a bad decision, but maybe he can actually learn a heck of a lot from it. What is wrong with one loss on your career? It wasn't an absolute beatdown. It was an eye injury. As long as the eye injury, or hopefully X-eye injury, doesn't cause a problem, then there was no problem with it. And I think that's a lot of what the other top contenders should be doing at the moment, is having these fights, because it's not happening. I think anybody's scared of getting that loss on their record. No. It's still a merry-go-round. It needs somebody else. It needs somebody up to clear it up. Absolutely. I'm just looking at the comments. Mac, oh God, I can never pronounce his name as well. Him, the guy that's knocking everybody out, everyone by KO. Yes, he could be let off the leash. I think they need to up these guys, throw it all in the mix, and while it's all clogged up at the top, just sort it out and find out, separate the men from the boys with everything. There's enough of them. There's fighters now like Derek Chisora, which could put up good tests against the two I've mentioned. Or how about Derek Chisora against Dubois? Any of the young guns at the moment. You know, I think he's got one last fight, cash out fight against a good name, get one last good payday, and then retire, because that Parker fight, that last one was not good to see. I think people say there's one last good fight in a fighter. I think that was the last good fight, because the only thing he had going for him was, I personally think, is that he was trying to old man him with his tricks, going back into the corner like he did, and a couple of times he nearly succeeded. I think he did well with what he has left, bearing in mind that the beatings that he has taken and the competitive fights that he's been in, which would have been trained in themselves, whether he was victorious or he lost. It's now a time for a new area. It's clogged at the top. It's a complete circus. It is nothing certainly new now. Let's all, the best of the rest. And there's some good fights to be made. Some very interesting fights, if they are prepared to get a loss on their record. And this is the one thing that's just so frustrating now, compared to even back to, well, more so to the olden days, where, fighters have losses on their record and it made no difference. With UFC, they have losses on their record. It makes no difference. It can help a fighter. It can, because a lot of these fighters are padded. They go top level, they lose. If they have these fights where they do lose, learn from it, it makes them a better fighter. I think Dubois has got a lot to offer. I was and I will consider to beat his drum as such. What do you think?
Cedric Ben, who also makes some very valid points with the letter L. He's a trainer and he's on TalkinFight quite often. And when he discusses fights and their records, he doesn't say it's a loss. He says it's a learning. They've taken something into account that they didn't know before, and next time they'll be better because of it. But the other thing I was thinking of while you're discussing those points, when it comes down to money, I have to wonder whether it's possible, just possible, if someone with enough money came along, and I'm not talking about the Matchrooms or the Frank Warrens or the Top Ranks. I'm wondering if someone else completely independent came along with the right amount of money, he or she could set up an actual tournament, not a weekend type style of tournament. But I'm just wondering if you could create some really decent heavyweight fights from among all those. I mean, like I said, I go back to that BoxRec list, and I see like 20 fighters who are basically unemployed right now, who could be put on cards, who could be putting on phenomenal fights for the fans, and if not simply earning money, create an entire new championship that they would fight for. Not necessarily a belt, maybe a cup, You know
like
what
the
I'm saying?
WBS, like Kelly Sowland did with the lightweights and the other the cruiserweights, etc. Something like that would be good.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, whether or not it's time for someone to step up and say, "Hey, God,
Never,
you know, what name
never
just
thought
popped in,
about it. Good point. Yeah, very
you
good.
know, you know what name just popped into my head? I hate to say it, Jake Paul. Jake Paul came out with some really good, for once, decent comments yesterday at the press conference at Madison Square Gardens when he was talking about women in boxing, and he said some stuff that even Eddie Hearn didn't say. And I was really surprised. I was taken aback. I'm going, wow, am I actually listening to Jake Paul? But if he's sincere about putting his millions to good use, I wonder if this is a way we could do it, is entice someone who has a sincere interest in boxing, sincere interest in its future, and moving it forward and unclogging, and not necessarily dealing with the top five. They are taken care of. I'm talking about the guys, the 20 guys, not the 30 guys under them, but the 20 guys under them who, as I said, are unemployed. You know?
It has been done before. You had, even going back to the Mike Tyson situation, you had the heavyweight tournament that Don King put together then with the lead up to Undisputed. That was involving the leading contenders and the champions at the time. But yeah, the WBS, which Kelly Sowland did. There's
Oh,
been a
yeah,
few of them.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Why not do a heavyweight one of those? Perfect. I don't know why it hasn't. It's not even been mentioned as far as I'm aware of. And maybe, hopefully, well, I'm at the Serrano Taylor press conference on Monday. If I can get hold of Jake Paul or somebody or whoever, it all depends there, who's there, I will ask the question.
Awesome.
That'd be a very good question to ask. No, I must remember that one. So, yeah, I mean, what a good thing to do, because at the top, like I said, you know, the top is going to be clogged up. I'd still say pessimistically to 2025.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
before the mandatory, the likes of Joe Joyce is going to get his mandatory shot. Let's say 2 years' time. What's Joe Joyce now? 37? I could be wrong. 36. He's not
36.
young.
Yeah,
36.
36.
So he's going to be 38 before the mandatory.
The youngest guy in the top 10 is actually Joseph Parker, unbelievably, and he's 30. Wow.
I keep on mentioning Joe Joyce.
Yep.
Now, he is the WBO mandatory, not about the, forget the WBC and over there at the moment, but not about the IBF.
Right.
Not about the WBA. You've got three other mandatories. The show that's going on at the moment at the top, any rematches, which I'm sure will be in place, are something which is that high, and especially with Eddie Hearn being involved with Anthony Joshua, which is the, I'm not saying it in a bad way, but it's just the norm for business that the rematch clause gets put in place.
Right.
But at what point do you actually stop? Because this is the rematch with Joshua and Usyk, if it happens. Now, do you have rematch clauses in the rematch clause? Or is it the case of it's then in the original fight, just one fight? I'd love to see a contract. And in fact, I shall ask that question. Yep. Let's get pen and paper. Write down what's going to be asked. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a really chirpy little comment made by one of the other fighters the other day. He goes something to the effect of, I fully intend to beat this guy. I don't know why there's a rematch clause. I'm not intending to lose this fight. So it's I can't remember which one of the fighters said that, but it's kind of true. Why are they having these rematch clauses put in if they're intending to win?
Well, without mentioning any names or anything, when you had any of the prior, let's say a different era, a different whatever, you never heard the rematch clause. As far as I was concerned, generally, the unwritten rule was if it was a close fight and it's needed, there was a bit of controversy, or it was that close, or the public, for whatever reason, demanded it, it would happen.
Yep.
That all goes out the window now. Yes, does it show doubt in the fighter winning? Good question.
I
I know it's
think
good. I know it's a good thing for the business side of it, for the fighter, in the unlikely event of it happening.
But that is certainly adding fuel to the fire when it comes to the argument of this clog, because a lot of it is due to the rematch clauses that are put in there.
Yes.
Yeah, so that this clog that we're now seeing in the heavyweight division would not be there had it not been for these rematch clauses that were executed by, among others, Anthony Joshua. But it's interesting, if Anthony Joshua loses and Dillian White loses, there goes Eddie Hearn's stake in the game. Well,
God, yes.
unless he's signing other heavyweights right now, hedging his bets. I don't know, but that would be a good question for him. Who else you got lined up in the heavyweight division, pal? Because these two guys might be on the way out.
I do think one of the biggest contributing factors at the moment with the big clog, you had all the thing obviously with Wilder and Fury with 1, 2, and 3, and the arbitration that took time, etc. But one of the biggest problems, and it's just dawned on me exactly what it is, and it should have been more obvious and should have been mentioned earlier, is the fact that it's because they want the undisputed. And you've got the group, you've got Usyk, who's the champion of 3 bouts, and you've got obviously Fury with 1. And they're looking over at the other person, what's happening? And this person won't make a move until this one's sorted out. And this one isn't still sorted out, so this one's still waiting. And he's trying to gauge something from that one over there. It's just not working. It's delay after delay after delay. And the problem is that the delay after delay goes down that domino pile line, whatever. And it goes down to... And because everyone's like hungry for the shot because they're in the top 10, and just in case whichever board says that, right, okay, we want anyone for the top 10 to fight because someone's pulled out, or whether people are just too... And it goes to, the reason why they don't want to lose at all and have that first one on the record is just a case of losing that position just in case. Because they generally call anybody within the top 10 when they need the fighter, or has been the case recently in was it the IBF one? For the IBF heavyweight title eliminator, they had to go back to the top number 15, and it still wasn't sorted out. Because everyone was going, no. And that was an actual eliminator. Not... Again, going back to one of the points earlier, not that being an eliminator, winning the eliminator is a big thing, because if you're just going to be in that queue of other people that have gone through eliminators that is mandatory for whatever, that is already mandatory or possibly the secondary mandatory, whatever, it's crazy. But people, it's not healthy for the division. And there are good fighters out there, and it's a shame. I do take back slightly my comment about it's very much reminiscent of the 80s. I think that is unfair, but I draw that conclusion when I just see somebody of Trevor Bryan in his condition fighting for what is, going back to the original point, the WBA regular heavyweight title. That was just when I stood back, and it's nothing against the challenger, because I can't pronounce the chap's name. Guidry?
Jonathan Guidry.
Yep.
Jonathan Guidry.
I messaged him on Instagram and said that he said much appreciated. He hopes he does as well. Whatever. I hope he gets some good fights and some money from the performance he did, which was not expected whatsoever. Good for him, but with no respect towards him, that fight should not have gone that way. A split decision to somebody that was, okay, he had a lofty number 13, if I remember right, position. But what had he done up to that point to gain that number 13 anyway? Why should they have to go to the number 13 anyway? Because of other people probably, that again, going back to the comment that they're all waiting, it's probably gone to the number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, actually, maybe not, no. Because they wouldn't have gone in with somebody 2 because of the way he's been protected. Which goes on to actually my next point with Trevor Bryan, and one of the things I wanted to discuss. Very curious to know exactly what his motivation is, because after the fight and even before the fight, he's been calling out all the people at the top. Now, that could be hot air, because there's no point anybody calling out the people at the top anyway, because you're not going to get the fight. And even if you did, and everyone else was done, you'd be waiting to probably 2027. So there's no point. But is he doing it for extra press, to show false balls, to is he thinking of money, or does he realistically think, and this is what I want to know, does he realistically think he can beat those people at the top? Because there's nothing in his displays that shows that he can't. I mean, what is his best career fight? A late stoppage of a very shop-worn, a very out of shape at the end of his career, having taken beatings, Bemern Stiverne. That's his best performance to date.
Mm.
Does he really think that he can beat the people that he's been calling out? I
No.
doubt it.
We've talked about it.
If one said yes, and he got a big purse, is he trying to cash himself out because he knows how bloody awful he really is? This is what I'm trying to get at. I just want to know. I'd love to jump into his head for just 30 seconds to find out. Do you really think you're that good? Do you really think you're the heavyweight champion?
He's just taking lessons from Don King, but you know what?
Yeah.
He's practically a foot shorter than Tyson Fury. So imagine those two in the ring. I mean,
Not in width.
They're both heavyweights, but imagine. I mean, how long would that fight last?
I mean, look at the golfing experience, the golfing class, the golfing everything. That would just be a mismatch. Let's go back to some of these questions a second. Daniel Dubois, Jared Anderson. Oh, absolutely. What a great fight, but that would not be done yet. Absolutely a great future fight. Completely agree. Eddie Hearn should have signed the Russian heavyweight. Yes, very good. But you've got the problem is with that the Russian who's winning everything by KO. He looks very good. The opposition, I mean, what's the best opponent that he's fought? One of the best ones was the Canadian who you know, Dylan Carmen, who is probably, am I right with this? He's probably domestic level.
Right.
I mean, his best win probably was against the 51-year-old, was he 52, Razor Ruddock 4 or 5 years ago. That's probably his best win. But he had him down and finished in the first round. But, you know, end of the day, great potential. But who's the chap? I can never remember his name in the middleweight. It'll come to me in a moment. Where he's won every single fight by KO. Every single KO was in the first round, apart from his recent fight where he's actually taken the distance and he was dropped. I think it was twice as well. Those two fighters I see very similar, and with the heavyweight version, will he land up going the same way when the time comes where he actually steps up in competition? And I think the answer to that one, being fair, is that nobody can say, oh, he's going to fall when he goes up a level. How can you tell? He is just, as far as I'm concerned, just a question mark. And I just think he's just got to be matched very well, because if he's used to knocking people out, he's got to be careful that first time he comes against somebody that's going to give some solid any kind of anything, he's got to see how he responds to that. It could be good, it could be bad, we don't know. But there's question marks over a few, and I think the same could be said with Anderson. But I do think with the way he appears, choosing the words right, he appears to be very good and appears to be one for the future. Ticks the boxes in every single box as far as I'm concerned.
Jared Anderson is the real deal. I mean, a lot of people were early on comparing him to Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, but in actual fact, one of the really good writers out there, boxing writers, compared him to a heavyweight, Shakur Stevenson. So he's getting some pretty rave reviews, and in a few years, he is going to be in that top 10, and barring injury, barring mismanagement. But he's the real deal when it comes to heavyweights and potential heavyweights. I'm looking forward to his climb up the ranks, without a doubt. Like that, he's fun to watch. He's fun to listen to. He's one of my favorite heavyweights right now.
Ticks all the boxes, yes. Apart from, how is he going to react when he gets hit on the chin? Has he got a good chin? You don't know, and that's why these guys must not rush them too quickly.
Right.
But yeah, seems really nice chap as well. It's really nice to sort of get behind somebody like that. Not saying that the other people in the division haven't got his likable ways, and he's certainly got charisma. That would be a breath of fresh air. I hope that he will fulfill the potential which he shows, because the division needs it. There's a lot of other good fighters out there, but there's nobody that's standing out. You know, you had Jagber versus what's his name, the Cuban chap, Sanchez. I mean, Sanchez won that. He won it easily, but I don't see Sanchez really sort of making it up to the top. And he is now, obviously, with the Jagber victory, you know, one of the ones nearer the top of the pile of contenders. But he still doesn't stand out for me. Yes, the win over Jagber was good, but I think that was more a Jagber losing it, I think, and being, which is a shame because he was looking good. But that was him, I think, not reaching his potential more than Sanchez being absolutely cracking. I don't think he's big enough, and he's not consistent in his work. That's how I see him. But no, there's lots. The division is in a bad state, but I think it could be good. But I just don't think, though, their people are going to let their fighters off the hook because they're all just waiting and waiting and waiting. I can repeat myself. It's the same thing, and it is a shame because the talent and the intrigue in fights, I think, are there as well.
I really do. I like that comment that we have in here from Adiri Pennant. I like the way he's termed that, a heavyweight Grand Prix. I like that. If you stage it over a season, that gives these heavyweights the chance to go toe to toe, and we actually get to determine a winner, even if it's not involving any of the ABC type belts. At least we, the fans, would know from among these other boxers who is a great heavyweight champ or caliber. You know what I mean? I like the way he's
Are they willing to do it? Are they willing to actually do that? Are they willing to do that? That's the thing. And will PBC, you know, with the heavyweights they have, would they let them go? Because they're very funny with taking their fighters out of in-house as such. I think the penny's got to drop that, you know, they've got to see. I mean, and they know more about it than we do, but they've got to see at some point that there's nothing to be, you know, unless you're going to match the top contenders with each other, there's going to be nothing big coming along for a long time. There's not going to be a sniff at one of the championships unless the champion is Trevor Bryan. It's not going to happen. It won't. You know, is Trevor Bryan, is Don King going to allow him to go in with somebody that's going to be in the top 10, which would definitely beat him? I mean, Don King might be 93, 5, whatever he is. But he's still got enough brain cells going in his head at his age that he'll know that Trevor Bryan, surely, I mean, he can't be disillusioned that much. He knows what the deal is with him. He's just milking it and doing the best of what he can and doing it very well. He's still got it at his advanced age. But, you know, he's not going to risk it. He'll risk it against somebody else that will appear to be good on paper or a flashy record with no substance behind it, like the number 13 that's just been brought in, which is a shame because lovely guy and he gave it a good effort. I think King must have been there while watching that fight and a few sort of tense moments. I bet he was getting a little bit on his chair. That's not. I just hope that the Daniel Dubois situation does happen with him being the next person. I mean, for a while it looked like he was going to be the next person to it, and that's the only thing. Just back to this whole point about is he being a worthy champion? Trevor Bryan, absolutely not. But if it's the way it's going to be, you've got to make the best of a bad situation. And with that in mind, I think, and it would be nice to have somebody better come along wearing the belt, so that the person wearing so the actual fighter is the person that's making the belt and not attempting to have it the other way around. Because that, at the moment, unless you're completely delusional, is pure fantasy. It's nothing. That was the WBA supposed heavyweight championship. I'd love to know what the figures were for the turnout there, because it was a very small place. From what you could see from the TV coverage, it was not very much.
No.
And again, you had the Makabu fight was reasonable, and this was a fight that was promoted as 6 title fights, 2 being world title fights. It's amazing how you can make something from nothing. No, the Makabu fight was reasonable. The other chap did well, but even that fight was a rematch with a supposed foregone conclusion. You know, it's the only interest and the reason why there was a lot of world interest in the Makabu fight was the fact that obviously you got Canelo, which is meant to be, as he's got the WBC's permission, to fight the winner of that bout. That is the only reason there was a lot of interest with this, and why when I would do an article and it would go out on social media, majority of the time that was the top article of the day. And I could have put out 16 articles that day, and that was the top article with hundreds. Got one of the Makabu fights went into the thousands of views of just that one article. It just shows it wasn't because of Trevor Bryan was fighting. It wasn't that Makabu was fighting because it was a rematch. It's because of, you know, the possibility with its further info of what's happening with Canelo.
Right.
Apart from that, what would have the show really been? It was making something of nothing. 6 title fights, 2 world title fights, held in a very localish kind of venue, which didn't hold that many. Yeah, but Canelo would have been watching.
Yeah.
No, but back to the whole point. Is he a deserving champion? No. But should there be a regular championship? No. You know, it's happening at lower divisions. There's arguments about who's the champ. Is it the super person or the world heavyweight champ? I'm the world champ. No, I'm the super champ. Doesn't matter. I'm still the world champ. It's an argument that's happened in all the divisions, but it's just so much because of the prestige of the heavyweight division. It just really shows this up for being a terrible situation of having this world regular championship, and it should be taken out, especially by the WBA. They're making it worse, but it should be taken out with the rest of their reduction program, which they're currently going through. And admittedly, under pressure, they're doing quite well. They are fulfilling so far. I'll choose my words right. They're fulfilling so far as what I can see with what they had promised in the reduction. I just wish it would go just that little bit further. But
along the same lines as other sports, I wonder if another option here for the boxing community, the powers that be, to consider might be something like they do in tennis, where you have country versus country, and extend that tournament over, as I said, a year-long period, akin to this Grand Prix that this fellow has suggested. So I wonder if there are other options for independent promoters to consider if the money's there. But again, I'm not so sure these guys are actually fighting at this stage, like underneath the top 5, for money per se. Right now, they want a chance at being a top 5 and contending for those world title championships. But underneath that top 5, I'll bet if you put a couple $100,000 on the table, those fighters would go for it.
Yes, I'm just trying to think in history if it's been done at heavyweights, country versus country. I cannot recall ever being the case. The only tournament I've only ever seen was the 80s one, which was arranged by Don King, but that was the leading contenders and the current champions at the time. Now I'm trying to remember what it was, because it has been done exactly what you said, where it's been country against country. But it was done at a lower level. It was very much domestic level fighters that went in for this competition. It's quite a while ago.
The reason I say that is because there seems to be a lot of, because of the pay-per-view situation, there seems to be a lot of interest in the Katie Taylor or Amanda Serrano fight, because you've got an Irish/GB type fighter going against an American, well, actually Puerto Rican, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, you've got a European fighter going up against an American fighter. So I think that's going to draw an awful lot of interest on both sides of the Atlantic, and a huge pay-per-view audience. So I have to wonder, thinking along those lines, whether boxing promoters might make sense of all this pay-per-view, if that is what's the guiding factor here. Not so many, like 15,000 people in an arena, that's nothing these days in terms of cash. But a pay-per-view audience where you're talking 1 million viewers, even 100,000 viewers, that's a big payday for a boxer. So I'm just wondering if there's another way of structuring this, and you've said it's been done before. I think there was something called the World Boxing Series, a series of
Yeah,
I
the
can't
World
remember.
Boxing Super Series, that was the one which was done by Kelly Sowland. You had, that was done first off, was it the lightweight division? Now, a lot of the, they've done others, but they've gone under the radar. But the one that stood out at the time was the lightweight tournament, which you had a Scottish chap winning it, Josh Taylor. He won that one. You had the cruiserweights, obviously, where you had Usyk winning that one as well. That's very good because the cruiserweight division at that time had some very good fighters in it. But it's happened at a couple of other weights as well. But that should be done. It said a while ago, before you had the division clogged up, that it should be done at heavyweight. Now, it would be very good. That would be such a good thing. I've never even recently given it thought that would be something which would be the answer. It would be the answer. It would create interest. It would generate a lot of money. It would sort out the men from the boys. What a way to sort it out. Absolutely.
That's my 2 cents for the day. That's my 2 cents.
I'm going to come away and
who's Stephen Shaw? Do you know Stephen Shaw?
Yes, good prospect.
Is he English?
There's a few of them which are there's a few of them which are coming up which are very good. There's a few, but out of the top 10 and top 15, Jamel Miller is the one which is the standout for me still, as you agree. I still don't, some of the other unbeaten fighters that are lurking. I'm still not convinced on what's the chap's name. I'll always forget his name. Very unbeaten. Oh God, it comes to me in a second. Unbeaten. He is. Can't remember. Was he? Yeah, he's from Croatia. And you've got the other Croatian chap. Always call him out, even if that would be a mismatch. But there's a few of these unbeaten fighters which still they're padded records, and there's and something like a tournament would really sort it out.
Philip
Hergovich, yes. Always, every time I talk to you, I always forget Hergovich's name for some reason. Looks a little bit like the elder Klitschko, but I'm not sold on him or so far with the opponents that he's faced, because again, who's the best opponent that he's fought? So I'm just wondering what my dog is chewing down here, as long as it's not cables. Been good. Only one cable's been chewed. It's a 25-pound cable. That's all. No.
I just noticed Stephen Shaw. Stephen Shaw, he's 44 on BoxRec, and he's 16-0. He's out of St. Louis, USA. Huh. Speaking of the Ukrainian fighters, that was bad news. I saw. Was it one of the Klitschko boys joining the army?
Don't know anything about it.
I believe who's the younger? Who's the mayor of Kiev right now? So it's not him. It's his younger
Vladimir.
Yeah, so his younger brother joined the Ukrainian army.
Vitaly is the elder one. He's the mayor of Kiev, and you've got Vladimir, which is the younger one.
Yeah, so the younger one just joined the Ukrainian army to go fight the Russians.
Wow.
So things must be heating up. I mean, it's honestly not headline news over here. But when I saw that a world famous boxer is joining the army, I mean, wow. That's
and you've got a former heavyweight champ who's in the middle of it, being the mayor of Kiev as well. Sort of watching him yesterday. There's a funny little thing just going away from boxing, where you've got the situation, not know much about it, obviously, with the tensions which are happening over there. You had Germany, which was who said they're supporting the whole thing. And Klitschko turned around and said, well, I don't think they're supporting much. And so the journalist asked, well, why is that? He said, they've given them 5,000 helmets and so many plastic aprons as support. Okay.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's it.
Anyway, politics, war. Yeah. I just wish that they were going for war and there was no politics at the top of the tree at the moment. But no, final thing is he a worthy champion? Trevor Bryan, absolutely not. Is it his fault? No, I don't blame him for cashing in on it. He will lose as soon as he goes up a level, which I don't think is going to happen. But if it's going to be Dubois that's going to be forced on him, Bryan will lose, absolutely. Dubois is a couple of leagues above or more. So someone's just been very nosy here. Yes.
Well,
so that's my.
You would
That's
hope.
my summary of it. It's no, it's a poor situation, and I felt bad when I was writing blah 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 tonight for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's like I was writing it and I was cringing. I did put it in inverted brackets though. I think it just makes a statement on that one. But yes, for the WBA World Heavyweight Championship, God, I was cringing.
It's absolutely true.
Just a writer.
Oh, there you go.
Apart from that, yes,
so
it's
from what I can read from the comments, it seems like the Ukrainians and the Russians should solve their differences in the ring, not on the actual battlefield. Because
if that's the case, then that's Ukraine will definitely win with Vladimir and Vitaly.
Well, let's see. It seems that we have Vladimir Ivanov is another good heavyweight prospect from Russia, as is Adu Karim Edilov, another good Russian heavyweight. So this chap knows his stuff. He knows his Russians, that's for sure. Anyway, there we go.
Yes, absolutely.
Another great
I'll
discussion.
See you next week. I hope I have some good news from Monday. Could be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely. Make sure you ask those very pointed questions to Jake Paul.
Yes, absolutely. Apart from that, till next week.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye.
Remember, like, share, subscribe.